Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Career Talks by Welcome Solutions. In these meetings we chat with professionals coming from academia and industry who build interesting careers and can tell us a little bit about their stories. Today I have pleasure to introduce Dr. Nick Edwards, who is a neuroscientist by training and having completed his PhD and postdoc training at Brown University at NIH and UC San Diego. As a postdoc, he decided that business provided the best way to scale up solutions to problems he cares about. Since leaving the bench, Nick worked in business strategy at Boston Consulting Group and returned to San Diego to work for Illumina, and is now transitioning to a startup company in stealth mode. And today, Nick is the host of the Once a Scientist podcast, highly recommended, where he interviews scientists about their careers in academia and beyond. He's a passionate advocate for mental health and training the next generation of scientists who will change the world. I cannot be happier to introduce Nick today, and thank you so much, Nick, for accepting our invitation. And I'm very grateful for you to join us, and we are very curious about your story told from your own perspective.
Thanks, Natalia. I'm super excited about it. I think that what you're doing is really important. You know, it's a subject that I care deeply about, and so I'm honored to be on.
Okay, so usually we start with these meetings with giving the floor to the guests, so that they can tell us their story more in detail from their own point of view. So, could you tell us a little bit about how your life looked like all the way from the times of your PhD, and how your transition looked like, and why did you take the decision to move towards industry? I mean, maybe a little bit from your perspective, and also what your thoughts are right now about the biggest problems that PhDs face on today's job market. So we are very curious about the behind-the-scenes story.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so it's a long, winding story, to be honest with you, and I don't want. Let's see. I'm trying to get the right level of detail to go into, and I think that it's really important to recognize that anytime someone tells these type of stories, it's like from it's retrospective, and so in some ways we're all making up our own story in a way, and you kind of fit a narrative to how things happened, and kind of this plan that I had going through it. But I think it's really important to me, like when I talk to people. I try and show that I made decisions along the way, but it was like the best available decision I could make, essentially, and not all options were available to me, and so I have kind of crafted a career in a way that I think has been fulfilling and interesting, but it's not like I planned it to go this way from the very beginning. I tried to capitalize on the opportunities that I had. So, stepping back, my training, I did an undergrad, started in English literature actually for a few years, and was in my senior year of college, and I'd had some science background, but I wasn't super into science because I didn't like the memorization of facts, and I thought it was rather boring, to be honest with you. I thought about doing medical school for a while, so I took a chemistry class. I actually hadn't done well in my first chemistry class a couple years before, and that's why I switched to humanities. and so I went back and I retook this chemistry class because I was thinking I wanted to be a medical doctor, and I did well in that class. I took the next class, which was organic chemistry, and I fell in love with organic chemistry because to me it was a way to problem solve, and it was kind of a creative process. And I started working in a lab, just volunteering and TAing for working as a teaching assistant for organic chemistry. And I realized oh, actually, I really do like science, and it's really interesting. So I took this organic chemistry class, and realized I liked it. I started thinking about majors, and I decided that I wanted to do neuroscience because I've always been passionate about mental health, and I've always had a lot of questions about it, having had family members that have gone through some pretty serious mental health challenges. And so I switched my major, and I finished all of my science classes in like a year, and it was pretty intense. At that same time, I had I was married, and we had our first child at the end of undergraduate, and so I was thinking, okay, what do I do now? And I really wanted to do research because I wanted to figure out some solutions and really understand mental health issues better. And so I decided academia and graduate school would be the way to do that. So I did a PhD in neuroscience, had this great opportunity to do this joint program between Brown University and the NIH. And that was great because like I got to work at the NIH where the focus is on health and so I worked at the National Institute on Drug Abuse and, you know, struggled like all PhD students do for multiple years. I had 3 years of totally failed projects where not even a single experiment went into my dissertation, and was super frustrated, almost quit science, um, and and I kind of had this moment where my PhD advisor was like, "You got to figure out whether this is the right thing for you." He literally said that to me, and um, I, I sat back and I thought, well, what else would I do? I don't even know what's out there, for one, and two, like, do I want to do science? And so I stepped back and I thought, no, I really do want to finish this, and I've always been the type of person that like I push through things probably when I shouldn't sometimes. And so I decided at that moment I was going to stay in science. I went in and just really, really focused and was able to finish in a relatively short amount of time after that and publish a paper that allowed me to have the opportunity to say, okay, I could probably still make it in academia. And so so I went on to do a postdoc in San Diego. That was for several reasons. By that time, we had 2 kids, and so one of the reasons was San Diego has just this incredible neuroscience program, UCSD, and I was excited about the science there. I knew that there was a biotech community, and so if I wanted to go into biotech later, I could do that potentially. And so, and maybe the biggest reason is, as you can see behind me, I guess, there, I surf, and I have since I was younger. So I decided to come to San Diego for that reason, for all of those reasons. Did a postdoc for a while, helped a friend with his startup company, and had some opportunities to work with an angel investing group and kind of looking at like new startups and kind of assessing them. And this was all just kind of by random chance. And I thought at that time, well, it's really hard to make a fundamental contribution to something like mental health through a basic science career. And I think I'm not downplaying it because I think that it's still super important, and I really like the academic track. I wanted to be a professor for many years, but I also realized that like for me, if I wanted to develop solutions to these types of things, to mental health or to biotech in general, business was the way for me to pursue that. And so I, in about 2 months, I did this mad rush, did case interviews to get into a consulting firm, and like people practice like hundreds of hours for these types of things. It was stressful. You know, I had 2 kids. I was still trying to work in the lab and not, like give up on my duties with my PI because I wanted to be fair. So worked like crazy. Had this opportunity to work at Boston Consulting Group where I was for over a year, and then we had our 3rd child, and while I was at BCG, and at that time I realized like I really needed to have the ability to focus more on my family, to returned back to San Diego where we wanted to be in the long run. And so took a position at Illumina in commercial strategy. Started a podcast really because I was like helping people, just coach them, you know, to get into consulting firms for a while. And I really enjoyed that. But I realized that like I was kind of the rate limiting factor there, where I couldn't help, you know, that many people because I just don't have enough time in the day. And so I wanted to be able to scale solutions. I wanted to be able to provide graduate students the resources that I didn't feel like I had as a grad student. And so, you know, that's where the podcast originated. It happened to coincide with the pandemic. And so like I had everything prepared. And then like I've been preparing for a couple months to release this thing. And the pandemic hit and was like, okay, this week is when we launch it. And so, you know, have been going since then. Have about maybe 40 episodes released. So if you want to listen, if you're interested in, you know, the viewers are interested in checking it out, it's really just like I almost think of it as like a dinner table conversation with somebody about with people about different careers. And so I talk to science communicators, I talk to venture capitalists, I talk to entrepreneurs, I talk to people like professors and academics, as well as postdocs and PhD students about all different industries. And it's a fun conversation. So yeah, that's kind of my trajectory. As you mentioned, I'm in a career transition myself, and that's always fun. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking, and I'm really excited about it, you know, to get more closely involved with the startup community, you know, here in San Diego and elsewhere.
Fantastic. First of all, I really love your office, Nick. I think it's it clearly shows who you are. That you have a startup mentality and you are research mentality, but also you're a dad. I think because we can see some toys in the.
Oh yeah, you can see my kids' bikes.
Very nice. Yeah, as you see, like I don't have any toys to place in the background yet, but who knows, maybe in the future. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your story, and it's an amazing journey. And actually, I would like to first ask a little bit about your research experience and back then when you were still an academic. Actually, I'm curious because before I finished my undergrad studies in Warsaw, and before I came to the Netherlands to do my PhD, I spent 3 months at Caltech in Pasadena. I was doing a summer project there, and actually after this project, I promised to myself I would never ever live in the US. And the reason was because of this lack of work-life balance. And I was in a lab where there were like maybe 35 people total, and most of them were postdocs. And it was a very competitive environment. And actually, everyone was glued to their computer for like day and night. And I remember when we went to like lab excursion in the mountains, like for like 3 days. It was like a lab tradition that every year they were going together for like one weekend to the mountains. And I remember that one of the lab mates, he was freshly married. He just got married a few weeks before. And on this occasion, he took like 3 days off. I remember that 3 days. So he didn't go to the excursion with us because he felt guilty that he already took 3 days off before because of his wedding. And it's a real story. And like after that, this is how people treated their work there. They were just they were so committed, and they were so it was a bit like an army. And I felt that I cannot live like this. And here
Sure.
in Europe, we are a bit more focused on the family, I think. And this is actually, you know, the standard is 9 to 5, and whatever else you actually want to put into your work, it's your own commitment and your own decision. But you're not expected to do that. So actually, I was curious also, like, how did you manage? Given my experience, I admire the fact that you started your postdoc and you had kids already. And how did you manage to actually marry the two? Do you have the same experience that people at California universities are so concentrated on their work?
I think that it's that it is a feature of the culture in America in general, in some ways, and especially startup culture. Specifically, I think that academic culture is very much this way, where it's not great that people tend to a lot of times define themselves by their science, and they and I'm not going to say that I have not been caught up in that trap, because I have done it myself, and sometimes, like, I have to constantly step back and check that, because it's really important to me to have a stable family life, and to be around for my kids and my partner. So I think that it is there's certainly truth to it, and it's really important to find like where your boundaries are and where your priorities are. To me, my priority is my family, and so whenever I interview with companies, or you know talk to potential new employers, I'm very candid about these types of things, because I tell them, look, uh, I need to have like daily time with my family. Like, I can't be always on. Um, and I think that you have to be able to set personal boundaries. And also, like, in the long run, when you think about 50 years from now or 30 years from now, what are you going to value your life on? Is it going to be the work that you did? Probably not. It's probably going to be the people that and that you love. And so I think that it's a super important issue. It's something that we need to fix in academic and scientific culture. And I think that it's a good thing in some ways, because it allows for productivity and interesting things to be built. But it's also it can be like detrimental, and you have to always kind of prioritize and refocus on self-care.
Right. Yeah, actually, there were some studies on what do people typically regret when they grow old and on the deathbed, and they used to say that they regret that they didn't spend more time with their family. That's the regret number one. Actually, nobody says that they work too little. So totally true. Okay, and actually, then I have more questions about your startup phase, because yeah, I'm very curious. So as we all know, the Bay Area and the Silicon Valley is this cradle of entrepreneurship and the startups as we know them today, the technical startups. So I'm very curious about. Because also I myself started a company, and I know a lot of PhDs who are entering this startup space here in Europe. And actually, I have a feeling that for us, for PhDs, it's particularly hard for certain reasons. And one reason is that we are idealistic and we really base our value on our technical knowledge and our expertise. And this is what we contribute, and this is and that's not necessarily what is the most valued in the startup culture. And what I feel, yeah, that was also my own finding when I started working with startups. At the moment, I'm focused more on my own company, but I also had a period of time when I was writing business plans for startups, and I was trying to also, I was planning to become a member of startups, but I was kind of always put in a very like this position where I was getting all the dirty job to do, all the harder parts of the project, and this the worst offer, like financially. And it was really, for me, it was really hard to maneuver myself to really use my contacts in the right way, and put myself in a position where I can actually influence projects. And it was hard because I didn't have that business acumen and that ability to navigate myself between people. That, after a few years in business, I think you get this ability, but you have to first be there and try many times with some other teams, and I felt that I was this naive researcher who thought that once you are smart and hardworking, then you will be valued, and that's not necessarily the case. Because you also have to find the right people and find yourself in the right place at the right time, and be able to sell yourself well, and to know how to fit, which project to fit, and what role to take. And this is just hard at the beginning. This is more of a street knowledge than textbook knowledge. That was my feeling. So like,
Yeah.
to start swimming in the sea of like people who build new projects, you really have to get some level of wisdom that you don't have after a PhD. That was my feeling. So I have that question for you. So what was the most surprising? What were the surprising things for you at first when you were entering the startup culture? And how do you feel about which of your skills and competences and which part of your expertise was actually the most useful? And how do you feel about the startup culture today?
Yeah. So um, I was fortunate to have had startup experience early on. I grew up in challenging economic conditions. Like growing up, there were times, when our heat or water or whatever went out, and that wasn't super infrequent. And so I didn't have much of a safety net financially when I started college, and I wasn't even planning to go to college actually. So um, I started in community college because I had never taken standardized tests to get into college when I was in high school, and just kind of wandered my way into college. And then I started to realize I liked it, and I wanted to continue on that path, but I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. And so I started by working for a startup. Um, and I was just a customer service representative. So I took phone calls and answered questions about products, and it was a low-paying job, but I learned a ton from it, and I learned what it was like to work in a small company and to be able to communicate with people from different backgrounds. What I was doing was actually selling like outdoor equipment, like snowboards and mountain climbing gear, things like that for an online company, and it was really interesting. I paid for early part of my college through that. Then I worked for another startup in college to pay for my when I transferred to a university. I continued to work. It was at a different company that was a startup, and so. I was fortunate to have had some business experience before I even started my PhD, and that helped quite a bit. Um, I think that there are communication elements that many PhDs have just not experienced in a lot of cases, and you have to get that experience somehow. And whether that is through volunteering for a club at your university or getting some experience for like working with a nonprofit or just going out and teaching in your local area to underserved communities. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but gaining some good communication skills is essential. Starting to network, and by networking I mean just like reaching out to people that have interesting backgrounds and trying to glean some insights, learn about different opportunities, and do that with people that are like one step ahead of you, rather than like 5 steps ahead of you in their career, because they'll be able to give you more relevant advice. Those types of things are really important. I think that as a business culture, one thing that we really need to do is like there is this incredible talent pool in science, like smartest people on the face of the earth, if you ask me. And and have so many abilities, that this unlocked potential that in some ways is not being utilized because everyone is going after this tenure track job that very few people are going to get. And so then they come up to this wall, this cliff, where it's like, I don't know what to do next. And then it's hard to navigate that. I think that one thing that universities need to be better at providing resources to help people to make these transitions, to learn these types of communications and skills, and how to translate what you do, because you are not just like a bag of techniques, you know, like scientists, you're solving totally ambiguous, difficult questions all the time, and that's what startups do. Like, I think that that intrinsically many scientists just make good startup employees or founders, because like, you go in day one not knowing what to do, and you just figure it out along the way, and you start, asking questions, and you start solving, problems. That's what you're doing when you're building a company. It's just turning that lens to a different direction around helping, solve something for customers rather than writing a paper. And so I think that universities can be better about training people with these things. Companies can be better. Businesses can be better about training people when they come in and providing a pipeline into industry, because I believe that we have the greatest source of untapped energy on the face of the earth in science. And if we can unlock some of the potential of these incredibly smart people, I've said this over and over again, but like, how much more difference can you make in the world than to enable people that can build the technologies that will shape the future?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I fully agree. I'm just, what I meant was that, what I feel personally is that PhD greatly helps me. The fact that I did a PhD greatly helps me with building the products. So building the company, everything from conceptualizing some problem, coming up with a solution, building the solution, and then building a website, building a network, like everything. Since PhD teaches you how to be systematic and how to decompose big problem into smaller pieces, then it also helps a lot with developing a company. I feel personally that for me, my PhD does not help me with making business deals. That's what I meant. That a different type of skill, and even if you're the best specialist and you are the best at building things, then without this business acumen to build good collaborations. I mean, I think that I recently kind of learned how to do it, but in the beginnings, but I think you have to really learn how to become picky with people, because there is, maybe it also differs in the Bay Area, because you guys have plenty of really smart people there and people who have great technical skills. In the Netherlands, we have, if you go to an IT meetup, then in a room full of people, like among 100 people, maybe 97 are business developers who are walking around searching for people who can program and build stuff. And maybe the remaining 3 of them in the IT meetup, right, are the people who can actually build something. So we have a great disproportion between the talking heads and people who can actually build stuff. And if you're a PhD without that ability to choose the right partners, then you will find yourself among these talking heads that will basically put all the work on you and promising stuff. That's my experience. So that's what I meant. That actually I had to learn on my own skin after I finished grad school, that I have to really think a lot about with whom I'm making partnerships, because people can promise me a lot. And in academia, they are very decent. If they say they will do something, they will do it. Outside academia, it's not always the case. So that was, for me, that was a major learning point. You have to build your partnerships in the right way. But again, this is my personal experience. Maybe you have a different one. So I was just curious.
No, I think that it's a really great point, and you need to make sure that the environments and the people that you are working with are like fit the culture that you want to be in. By the way, I'm not in the Bay Area. Like I'm in Southern California, so it's actually pretty big distance. It's a little bit different, but like we still do have a pretty big startup culture in San Diego as well. But so I think I understand where you're coming from. I think, and it is a little bit different from my experience though, because I decided when I left the bench that I was going to go in on the business side rather than kind of coming in with technical expertise. And so I've never actually used my technical expertise outside in the business world, and so that is fundamentally a different experience. And I think that it's a really good point though, because if you're coming and in some cases when you're for like an entry level type of position where you're going to be working for a company, if you're coming in from the scientific track, in a lot of instances they're hiring you specifically because you have very specific skill sets that they need to be able to kind of utilize quickly, and so if you're coming in from that aspect, what you really want to be able to do is assess the company. And like this is always true whenever you're going for a new job. Like they are not interviewing you, you're both interviewing each other. Like you need to whenever you are interviewing with the company, you're trying to show that you have qualifications and translate the things that you have learned into what fits what they're doing, as long as it does fit, right? But sometimes you can sell yourself on the fact that like I can learn new things, and I've done that many, other times. But like, so you're interviewing, but you're also like, it's really important to make sure that the people that you're talking to, that like you're actually vetting them, because you never know. Like not everyone has the same capabilities. Not everyone has the has the focus on the values that you care about. And so I think for scientists that are looking to transition into something like a startup or industry, it is critical that you don't just take whatever comes. In some cases, like maybe that's what you have to do, because like that's really all that there is out there. And so I don't want to, I don't want to say that like you should be turning down every opportunity, but at the same time, you realize that you have a lot of value, and that the skills and the thought processes, the way of thinking that you've learned in your PhD and postdoc or whatever, really do translate to business skills. It just takes a little bit of exposure and experience. And so when you do make that jump, you want to find the right people to make that jump with. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, for me, that was a learning curve. Maybe, also people have different adaptation curves for different things. So for me, for instance, I adapted to the fact that I have to now be independent and make my own decisions much faster than to the fact that, I have to filter everything I hear. That was two different things. So, okay. And now I would like to ask you a little bit about your experience with Boston Consulting Group. And I'm curious because consulting is one of these areas where PhDs often go, and that's actually for a good reason. So that's one of the ways to gather a lot of industry experience in a short time, because of doing multiple projects on multiple topics. But actually, I'm curious about that particular place because there are many different ways of managing a consulting company, and I know that some companies, especially the small ones and the middle ones, and they prefer to, at least here in Europe, this is the case, and so I'm also curious how it's in the US. But here, it's often the case that these small companies, they basically send their employees to the client side, and the projects are quite long, so they could take, let's say, a year. So then you work hand in hand with the client's employees for a quite relatively long time, and then you switch the project and work with another client. And larger companies here in Europe, they mostly do projects on their own site, and the projects are much faster. So they are like few weeks max, and then another project. So you build a large portfolio of projects, but you never really have that experience with working at the client side. So I'm curious, what is your experience and how it felt to work for a business consulting group? And can you make that recommendations? That do you believe that, from your own experience, would if you could choose again, do you think that this is a good choice for the first job in industry?
Yeah. I do. I mean, I think it's a great option, and I had an incredible experience. I don't regret it at all because it taught me a lot of things that I just hadn't learned elsewhere, or wouldn't, maybe like it would have taken a while to learn them in other places, because you're kind of thrown into this refiner's fire, if you will. And it's very fast paced. It's You're working on exciting problems that are like the biggest problems that businesses are facing. And in the case of like BCG, where I was working, these are really big companies. The could be the biggest companies that you hear about. And so it's exciting. There's really smart people that you're working with. That was the thing I liked about it the most, is like I've met just so many interesting and cool people. Would I recommend it for everyone? No, definitely not. It's for one, if you want to get in to a high tier consulting firm like BCG, McKinsey, Bain, or like there's a lot of others, like boutique life science firms. It's very competitive. And for better or worse, like it requires a certain level of dedication, even just to prepare yourself to go into those interviews and succeed. I I did that at nighttime, and then I listened to like this these audio recordings in the daytime, like while I was doing experiments at the bench, to be able to get in, and people practice 100 or more hours for these interviews. And so you do that, and there's not even the guarantee that you're going to get the job. And so I interviewed and got to final round interviews at 3 different companies before I got rejected in final round interviews at 3 different companies before I even got a job offer. And I thought, going into BCG, that I just wasn't even going to get an offer, because I had not succeeded, in previous companies, and so, it's kind of this mental trick I had to play in my own head. So this is all to say, like, I think it's a great opportunity, and it's a great company to work for, a great industry. Not everything is good about it. Like when we talk about working crazy hours, I worked pretty long hours at BCG. But in general, I had a great experience. I would say though, like if that's something that you're interested in going into, don't necessarily put all of your eggs in one basket. Meaning that there is a level of chance involved, and you have to realize that you do have to like put a ton of energy into it in order to get in. And so I don't know, it's almost like you have to dedicate yourself at least for a little while, but like you need to be thinking about other things on the back burner, and it may not be the option for everyone, who, especially if they're up at kind of last second and saying like, I need to get something right now. It may not be the best option for that. But I can also tell you a little bit about what it was like working for them, if that's
Sure.
helpful.
Yeah, please.
Sure. So, one of the great things about BCG is that, and this is, I think McKinsey does this. I don't know. There may be other companies that do this. BCG hires something like upwards of 20% of their hires are PhDs or MDs or lawyers. And there's a cohort when you first start. And so I went to a couple of weeks of, um, it's called a business essentials program, and they teach you about business. It's this crash course in finance and crash course in a bunch of different things. And that was really interesting because like I really didn't know that much, and there were people that came in that didn't have any business experience, and so it's really great from that perspective. They have um, incredible learning and development programs where you you pair with somebody who kind of like shows you the ropes for a little bit. It is exciting. It's fast paced. Like it feels like breakneck speed in some regards. You get in there, and in academia, you know your timelines are pretty loose if you have timelines, and and it's really kind of up to you. In consulting, there are very specific timelines. There are deadlines, and you plan out the entire project, and you're hitting milestones and deliverables. And every single day, you've got a list of things that you need to do, and you're working very closely with other people
Mhm.
to communicate and have this dialogue to like it's like a hypothesis testing approach where you start out. It's like, hey, here's this big, scary business problem, and I have no idea how to solve that problem, but here's what I do understand about it, and I'm just going to throw a hypothesis out there, and I'm going to test that hypothesis. And you test that hypothesis by getting data from people, by talking to individuals. You do it by looking up information on the internet, by analyzing data, and so it's actually not so dissimilar from the scientific process, but it's just very fast paced, and so it can you're constantly zooming in and out on problems where like on the difference I think is in academia, in science you have this ability to really narrow in on the problem and think about that in like a very minute detail over the course of months and years. In consulting, you're zooming in and you're doing all these calculations, and like still analyzing data, but then you have to zoom back out and you have to think about how does that fit into the bigger picture, and then you have to zoom back out and think about like what's their problem, and is this like actually solving the problem. And so it's constantly switching back and forth from like a very high level of thinking to a very like uh, I don't know, methodic level of thinking. And that was a really challenging transition for me. And I've talked to many other people. It seems to be pretty consistent. So those are some of the things that I learned. I mean, it's an incredible company to work for. Did I want to do that the rest of my life from a work-life balance perspective and from a family perspective? No, personally, I did not, and that's why I left. But I will never regret the experience that I had.
Sure. Yeah, actually, this is actually consistent from with what I normally, what I usually hear from people working for consultancy companies, like the top ones. Actually, I'm curious. So, did you also have to put, time your projects and put every of your working hours on certain projects, or you didn't really have to manage yourself to that extent?
No, at BCG where I was, it's a single project that you're working on, and so I didn't have to like go back and forth between projects or time the amount or time how long I was working on things, clocking in, clocking out. There was no clocking in or clocking out. It's like you go in at a time that is agreed upon by the team that you're working with, essentially, and you leave whenever you've got what you need to get done for the day. And in some cases, like I was getting in at 8 a.m. and leaving at 1 a.m. That was not always the case. It was not like super common, but you invest a lot early on. I did, at least, because I wanted to get up to speed quickly, and I wanted to perform well in the job, and so I sacrificed a lot. I was gone, also flying away from home 4 days a week, and so I didn't see my family for 4 days out of the week, and that was really challenging. But it was like I learned a ton, and and I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's that's kind of what it's like. But like, I guess what I was getting at, though, is that no one is micromanaging you. You don't have like I didn't even have to clock in or clock out. It was just about getting the job done. And
Yeah.
and and I'll also say, like, once you get better at the job, and some people are just better than I was in general, and like they didn't have to put as much time in. But like once you start to figure out the job, I think about 6 to 9 months in a lot of cases, it that intensity diminishes, because like how much time things take, and you know how to expect things. You know how to set expectations with your manager, for example. These are all things that you kind of learn along the way, and so those are crucial elements that can help to promote your work-life balance. I don't know, though, that it's ever going to be kind of like the like 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, actually, I feel that it might be something that naturally happens when you put a lot of ambitious people in one room, because that's what they do, right? They have very, very strict selection process at the beginning. So companies, I'm not sure about Boston Consulting Group, but I know that in McKinsey, the acceptance rate at the interviews is less than 1%. So it's like extremely like um, there are like people who are cherry picked from all the applicants, and yeah, they are extremely ambitious. These are the people who sacrificed a few months of their life to prepare for the interview. So once you put them in one room, even if you don't give them any guidelines, they will start extorting themselves with work. I feel that's what's going to happen. So and I feel this is often what happens in graduate schools often, because we are just put together in one place without clear, without these rules. We don't have to leave at 5, but since we are all ambitious, then that's exactly what's going to happen, that people start sitting at work until late hours, because they just don't want to be
And we're competing against ourselves,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
All right. So actually, before we finally talk about Once a Scientist, I would still like to ask you something about Illumina, because actually I'm familiar with the name, because in one of the labs I was working with as a PhD candidate, we were working on Illumina's equipment. So I'm actually familiar with what they produce. But actually, could you maybe also explain that for the people who are watching this material, what this company is doing, and what is the how does the working life, working environment look like? And again, maybe what type of professionals with what type of mindset would you advise to go to work for Illumina the most? And I'm curious, how does this company look from the inside?
Yeah, so Illumina is a genomics company. So we sell sequencing instruments to be able to sequence the genome, and uh, much of the focus in recent years has been pushing toward clinical genomics to be able to help push the boundaries so that we can detect things like, for example, coronavirus, or early detection of cancer. And so it's an exciting company that's pushed the limits in terms of genomic applications, and as many scientists that may be listening to this, you may have either used Illumina instruments or have done some sort of sequencing that involves something with Illumina, and so I don't want to. I want to be clear. I'm not speaking for the company. But like I've had an incredible experience at Illumina. I've been on the business side, and so I have this science background. I have a PhD background, but I work in the commercial group at Illumina, which is kind of interesting. It's essentially like the sales organization, and I help build out solutions and tools to enable and empower our sales teams to succeed. And so there's a lot of different types of positions at a company like this. One is on the kind of pure business operations side, like I work on. There are obviously scientists and engineers that are developing the solutions. There are people that are product managers that kind of go out and talk to customers and see like conceive of ideas for new products and help kind of create a vision and bring that vision to fruition. There are salespeople that are former scientists that and not all are former scientists, of course, but there are salespeople that go out and work with customers to show them what potential applications of our instruments are. There are service and support people that that really understand the technology and help customers to be able to kind of move forward in their workflows, and also like fix instruments, for example. So there's lots of different types of positions. I've had just an incredible experience. I love the company. Really believe in the mission of it, and I can't. It's one company out of a large industry of biotech and med device and whatnot, and there are those same types of roles and functions exist across all companies that are selling products. And so I think that it's really important when you think about what types of positions you're interested in, think about what do you like to do? Like what are the things that you care about? Do you really care about getting in the technical details and designing something? Well, maybe then you want to be on the science and engineering side. Do you like working with people, and maybe that involves, maybe that's closer to product management and dealing with customers, or maybe even sales. Like sales careers are awesome, and many scientists don't realize that there are a lot of opportunities for technical sales that can be very fulfilling. So Illumina has been incredible, great company to work for. I think that across the industry, there's a lot of different types of roles to go into from science, and it's really about just making sure that you understand what the company stands for, like trying to talk to people within those companies to see if the culture fits what you want, and then starting to get an understanding of what are the different types of functions and roles that people do, and how does that map to my interests.
Okay, great. Sounds like your walking advertisement for Illumina. That's your walking billboard of Illumina. That's good. Sounds really great. I mean, if I was now looking for jobs, I would definitely check out their webpage after what you've just said. So it really sounds very encouraging. So thank you for this. I hope that some of the people watching this episode will also share the same opinion and check it out. Okay.
Let me just say also, this is like not an advertisement for Illumina, like because I want to make sure, like I'm not representing the company. This is not a paid advertisement or any type of advertisement. Like this is just my own personal perspective. So
yeah, we can confirm. I can confirm Illumina didn't pay us for us saying this. Okay, great. Well, great to know. Then yeah. All right, and I would like to now ask you a little bit about something that you probably really like to talk about, Once a Scientist. Great initiative, and yeah, actually, I would like to know a little bit more about the origins and also, what you also learned from this experience yourself, and something about the people you met, and maybe, things that, for instance, you thought would be difficult um, um, about arranging this type of show, but turn out to be easy, or the other way around, things that you thought would be easy but turn out difficult, something that change your thinking about certain problems, and tell us a little bit more about the behind the scenes of Once a Scientist.
okay, sure. Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know how I ever even got the I used to listen to podcasts when I was driving to and from work, and really like the format. I am a little bit introverted as a person, and so it is like kind of intimidating for me to get in groups of people and to talk, among large crowds. I tend to um, prefer, communicating with people on a one-on-one basis and having conversations. And so really it's kind of an outlet for me to be able to do that because I I like learning about other people and about what different things are out there in the world, different ways of viewing the world, whether that's from a career perspective, whether that is from like a personal experience perspective. I really think that it's important to um, shine a light on different ways of viewing things because um, one of the things I get kind of well, I won't go into too much into detail here, but one of the things that concerns me about the world is that like people are in secluded, like closed off communities, and that happens in science all the time. Is that it's kind of an echo chamber in some ways, and and I think that the more we can open dialogue across industries and across political beliefs, across all different types of things, like the the better we can make the world because it's important to flesh these types of things out. And so I started the podcast because um, I had seen now I've kind of seen the inner workings across business and across academia. And I think that there are some challenges and problems to solve across both of them. With diversity, inclusion, with mentorship, with mental health challenges, and I'm really passionate about those types of each of those subjects. And so I try and talk to people, about these things, and then also really kind of shine a light on what different types of things scientists do. After they get their PhD or after they get their postdoc, or they don't necessarily, it doesn't have to be a PhD or a postdoc. In all cases, scientists, you don't have to have a PhD to be a scientist, is my perspective. But it's been really interesting to see the huge broad array of different things that people do. I had no idea, I I don't even know, like, lobbying for science, working for a scientific organization and lobbying for them. Like I guess I should have known that that was a thing, but I didn't. And you know uh many of the episodes, it's like I'm really discovering it along the way, because I don't go in with a ton of information to each episode. I really just kind of go in kind of exploring and just starting to ask questions. And sometimes, I probably sound like totally novice and inexperienced, and it's because I am. Like, I'm learning about industries I've never even thought about. And so it's fun from that angle. And so it's been really fulfilling to meet different types of people, to kind of connect back with the science community, because I think there's this affinity. If you've gone through this type of training, like, we have shared experiences and we've gone through similar hardships in a lot of ways. And so that's been really awesome. I think I thought it was going to be challenging to get guests, and to get people to talk about things and to, develop content. Not at all. Personally, like, I have too much content I have to start getting out. The challenge is like the mechanics of it, and just finding the time to edit these things. And sometimes I don't want to take away from my family time in the evening. And so, like, after my kids go to bed, I'll just like edit episodes until like midnight, because there's no other time that I can do it. So, that's one of the challenges, is just like finding the time to be able to do it. But overall, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. I have just the coolest and kindest listeners and followers of the podcast. So I'm really super grateful for that. The people, especially it's nice when people reach out every once in a while and they say, this thing that you said, or this thing that one of your guests said, really made a difference for me. And I enjoy that aspect. So that's kind of the experience that I've had.
Yeah, fantastic. I totally get what you say. This is. I also I always liked talking to people in the first place, and I did it a lot in private, and that's how I wrote the whole book. I learned because I feel that a knowledge about the job market is a street knowledge. There are no textbook that will tell you how the job market looks like. The only way to really find out is to talk to a lot of people who have that experience and can share. And on the good side of things, people really like talking about their careers. So that's also my feeling, that actually, it was also funny because initially I was recording this episode and putting them on the company website. But then at some point I realized that it's actually a lot of volume, and my company website will not be able to carry this amount of volume at some point. So I moved it to YouTube, and then I asked my friends, the people who already took part in it, you know what, I think I will just put it on YouTube in open access. Do you think that you can take it on your chest to be on YouTube? And they were like, great, like how many people did watch me already? And I was like, oh, I thought they would be intimidated by the fact that they're on YouTube, but it was the other way around. They were just looking at the stats. So people actually want to refer to what you said a moment ago about you being introverted. And actually, it's funny that you're saying so, because I feel that on the one hand, this is one-on-one interaction, but on the other hand, once you put the material out there, it can reach a lot of people. And for me personally, that was the difficulty initially, because once you even as a researcher, when people read your papers, they don't associate these papers with you as a person often, and you are still kind of private. But once you do a podcast or any, if you're present on social media to like in extensive amounts, and if you start building some form of following, which is a natural consequence of what you're doing, then there is this asymmetry, right? All of a sudden, more people know about you than you know, and that's not the experience that most people have. And that was, for me, that was a big barrier initially, that some people know and hear about me that I never really will have a chance to meet. And that this asymmetry actually is growing. And for me, I don't know how you feel about that as an introverted person.
It's kind of frightening, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think about it every once in a while, and I try not to think about it because I don't know. It feels very private, and if and it's kind of um, it's it's exactly like you say. It's an asymmetry, um, but the way that I view it is that um, I've gone through challenges and I've gone through hard times and I've pushed through things and I've been really lucky in a lot of cases and also privileged in a lot of cases as well. So um, I, I tend to view it as a little bit of a not necessarily an obligation or but maybe a little bit of an obligation or a duty that like I have been very fortunate in my career and have had people that have helped me out along the way as I've sought out a lot of that help. Um, and it's a great opportunity for me to be able to share that back, to other people. And it's a little bit scary and uncomfortable because, people can take the things that I say out of context. And I may, have opinions that people may not like in some cases. Uh, and that's okay. I think that that's healthy. That's fine. Because my opinions are also malleable and, and I'm willing to, and I love hearing feedback from people because, um, if I'm thinking about something in the wrong way, I want to know. But it is kind of frightening because, I don't know how the things that I put out there in the world are going to be perceived, and and maybe that comes back on me in a negative way in some cases. But I feel like the more that I have been willing to be honest and vulnerable in some cases, and also try and exercise a little bit of humility. I'm not saying I'm the most humble person. Um, I've had generally a pretty good reception, and I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. I don't even know that I'm not necessarily a public figure or anything, but like I am putting things out there in the world that you know give people opportunity to respond, and I don't know, it's a little scary.
Yeah, actually, I think so far you're doing it all in the right ways because I can see your activity on LinkedIn, and I can see that you got a lot of public trust, which is great. And I can see that you are very good with activating people to really share. And I can see also that some of your posts get a few hundred comments, which is really great. That means that people really feel for what you say, and that's I'm fan of yours myself, and I can tell that I mean you have very good reception indeed. So you're a role model for me as well in that area.
Well, thank you. You too. I mean, like you're doing this too, and like and I'm just grateful that this is happening. That many people are pushing more to help out and focus on these issues and mental health things, and so I think the more people are willing to open up about these types of things, the better it is for all of us.
Okay, thank you so much for your kindness. Yeah, and actually, I always like to end this meeting with some very general questions, and I would like to now ask you very like itchy and uncomfortable question that is often the case happens in the job interviews actually.
Okay.
So, how do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, right now I will for the near future, and for the next few years, I plan to be working with the company that I will be just signed a job offer for the other day, and so I'm kind of building something new and really excited about that. 5 to 10 years down the road, um, I don't know what my life is going to look like. I think that I want to continue and maybe double down on being able to spend more time with my family, and and I have ideas for things that I would like to build at some point in the future, to solve important problems, and so maybe 10 years down the road, it's starting up my own company, and or maybe less, I don't know. And to me, I I have a very kind of like driving need to enact change in the world, change for the better. And I don't know what manifestation or form that is going to take, but I care deeply about societal issues, and care deeply about the scientific community, and so my goal is just to continue to push on things that I think are important for society is more broadly, and not just for like my financial gain or anybody else's financial gain.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm very curious how this is going to pan out in the future and what's gonna do. But you're already a guru on LinkedIn, so it's already interesting story by it in itself. Let's see how it's gonna go. Yeah, where you gonna go next? Okay, so lastly, is there anything that, in general, that you would like to advise to PhDs who are thinking about the career switch? Something maybe on the basis of your own experience, or maybe on the basis of the experience of people you talk to. Just it can be anything.
Yep. Yeah. My biggest piece of advice, well, I have two. And I've repeated this before, but I think it's worth repeating. Before you start moving in some direction, before you start running away from academia in some cases, because I know that that happens, and it didn't happen for me, but it does happen because people have bad experiences in some cases. Again, not saying anything wrong with academia, but before you start making moves to do something else, figure out where you want to go. Like, because you're never going to get to where you want to get to if you don't know where it is, right? And so it's super important to dig down, get introspective about your life. What do I really care about deep down? And maybe that's a guest on the podcast, Chris Moore. He in his episode, he had this really great piece of advice, which is like, think about the people that you look up to, and write a list of like 5 people that you look up to. Try and like write out what are the traits for each of these people that I really respect, and then find the commonalities between those people, and those can be driving factors for you. If you want to figure out like what you really care about, and so first figure that out, and then map that to what are roles and types of positions that are out there that I could potentially have a roadmap to, and then that's the basis of a hypothesis right there. So you're forming a hypothesis about what you would like to do in the future. The second thing is test that hypothesis. And you test that by getting on as many phone calls with people that are doing that thing or something similar as possible across industries, across companies. Just figure out as much as you can about it, and really test, like, is this really something that I want to do? Because during that process, you might find that there's something else that's actually a little bit like more interesting to you. And as you do that, you build a network, and you start to develop friendships, and so there's also mechanics of how you do these things, and making sure that like you're communicating in a way that's clear, and that like you're being very polite, and following up with people. So there's mechanics on how to do it, but develop a hypothesis, test that hypothesis with data when you talk to people, and then push for it, and try and be all in. I I think that it's important to have, you know, kind of the short term, like you need to have also plan B as well. And for many people, like if you're up against that deadline, that plan, like you don't really have all the time to do all this. So you're just operating within whatever constraints you have to optimize your situation. But if you can start planning ahead and being able to think about these things very proactively, I think that it helps you in your career. I wish I would have done that a little bit more personally, actually, because I didn't even decide that I was interested or didn't even really know that much about consulting until like it must have been like 3 months before I applied, or 2 or 3 months before. And you know, maybe there were other things that I could have been interested in. I know that there are other things that I could have been interested in after having done the podcast now. And so, you know, that if I could go back and take my own advice, I would do that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I fully agree with you that actually misinformation and lack of information is also a big problem. That's also why I'm working on this issue, because I myself, I was very lucky in a sense that I could take a long time after my PhD contract expired to just mind wander and try different things, because yeah, I just decided to take a gap year and I didn't really have that pressure to find another job soon. But I know that, and then I naturally started developing my interest towards entrepreneurship. But I know that many PhDs don't have the luxury, and they have to find another job within the first few months or even few weeks after the contract. So it's extremely hard if you don't have that buffer, that time for networking. So the sooner you start, the better for you. And
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today and for all these insights. And you have very, very interesting career so far, and so many different working environments you've been a part of so far. So that was a lot. And I'm very curious about your future endeavors. And for everyone who is watching, please check out Once a Scientist. There will be a link below, so that's obligatory. So if you got to this point in the video, this is a homework, but this is not this is not the choice. You just check it out, please, guys. And thank you so much, Nick. And yeah, guys, if you like this type of content, please hit the subscribe button. And I would like to apologize also for my negligence. I know where San Diego is on the map. I have a bad day apparently. I've even
That's okay.
San Diego.
That's like people don't realize how long California is. It's like a really long, like top to bottom. It's a huge state, and so you know, they seem like they're, a lot of times I think they seem like they're closer together than they are, and like they all sound the same, all the towns.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I even took a flight from San Francisco to Los Angeles, so I know how far it is, but I don't know what happened. But yes, San Diego, of course, Southern California. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nick, once again. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a nice day.
All right, thank you so much, Natalia. It was a real pleasure. You too.